I just finished the Until Dawn remake, and I thought it'd be a great time to discuss on how my playthrough went and whether or not you should play it. Now, don't worry, this review is spoiler free, and I've included chapters below if there is a specific part you are more interested in. I played on PC, but I've also gathered information on how the game performs on PS5. So by the end of this video, you'll know if the Until Dawn remake is actually worth playing. Let's start with the story. Because let's be real, this is the heart and soul of the game. Until Dawn follows a group of friends that revisit a cabin in the woods a year later after a death of a friend. Now, why anyone would want to revisit a cabin after an inexplicable death beats me. The pacing of the game ramps up very quickly, with plenty of twists that keeps you guessing. And just when I thought I kind of figured out the story and what was happening, the game just threw a complete curveball. And it really did have me rethinking everything that I thought I knew about the game. Now, what makes the narrative of the game even better is the character development. You really get attached to these characters, and that's what makes every single choice you make in the game feel so weighty. And since the game is choice-based, the game really makes you want to choose the right decision for your character. And we'll get more into that in the gameplay section. Now, the game takes about, on average, 8 hours to play, so it is on the shorter side. Once you finish your first playthrough, you're able to go back into chapters to be able to make different decisions at certain points in the game, rather than having to start over completely, which will ultimately lead to different quote-unquote endings, which, well, we'll get more into that later. The Until Dawn remake really leans into the interactive movie feel, and you're basically running around making decisions for 99% of the time. Occasionally, you'll use tools, but even those moments are about choices than action. And this may sound very boring, but the narrative and the story really keeps you engaged. There's this mechanic called the butterfly effect, which is one of the highlights of the game. It basically is exactly that, a butterfly effect. Depending on the decisions you make, the outcome of the game will change. Your decisions can either affect the character and the story immediately, or they can take effect way down the line, which makes the game very, very exciting. Because something that you did at the beginning of the game could completely change the outcome later. The game really does keep you on your toes. You'll constantly second guess yourself because every decision you make could be the difference of life and death for your character. Exploration is another key element. While you're playing the game, you're incentivized to check every little corner of the area you're in to find tools that you can use or clues to solve the mystery of what's going on and trying to figure out the story. And if you miss one of these items, tools, that too can affect the outcome of your story. I also think that they've done a very good job in making sure that this doesn't feel repetitive. The game does a good job of keeping things fresh and making you feel like every move you make is very important. Now, visually, the game looks stunning. I personally think that the original game looked good, but with the shift to Unreal Engine, the game looks even better. The motion capture was top-notch. From the facial expressions or character movements, it really makes the emotional parts of the game hit harder. Now, there were a few moments where some characters looked slightly odd in movements, which wasn't a big deal, nothing that really took me out of the immersion of the game. And some players that did play the original game said that one of the character models looked weird. I personally didn't see that as someone who didn't play the original game, and I don't think anyone who didn't play the original game would either notice. And even if you do notice, I didn't find it to be a big deal. Not only are the graphical look of the characters well done, but so is the environment. The remote isolated environment really pulls you in. The game did a really good job at making you feel alone, even when you were with a companion, and really the only things that could save you were your own decisions. With the remake, the lighting has also been upgraded in ways that just weren't possible on older consoles. What's also nice is that they reworked some camera angles that give the game a fresh perspective even if you've played it before. The dialogue is another strong point of the game. The voice acting is spot on, with every line delivered perfectly to match the mood. Whether a character is scared, annoyed, or angry, you really do feel it as a player. What really adds to the immersion are the quieter moments. Heavy breathing during tense scenes, hushed conversations. These little touches really make the game feel alive. And let me tell you, characters that were really meant to be annoying were really annoying. Speaking of which, the acting was phenomenal. The cast is stacked with talented actors. Each one of them brings their character's personality to life. As the player, you'll really feel the tension, the jealousy, and the fear between them, especially when two characters who clearly don't like each other start bickering. In fact, the acting was so great that there was one character in particular that really started to get me mad, and like, I mean very mad, because they just wouldn't stop complaining. And there was a point where I didn't mind what her outcome in the game was. As crazy that may sound, the game really did make me feel anger towards this character. Let's talk about the performance, because this is where things get a little shaky. The game ran generally well on my PC with maxed out graphical settings. I do have a higher end PC though, so take that into account. There were some occasional hitches, nothing that caused me to miss inputs, but it did come close. The worst thing was the menu freezing though. Now, I can't count the number of times that I had to restart the game just because I tried to open a specific menu during a cutscene. And apparently this was a very common issue amongst other people playing on PC. Apparently, if you open up that menu during a cutscene, you can't exit out of it, and the game kind of half freezes, where the game doesn't really freeze, but it doesn't let you back out of it either. The menu items go blank, and all you see is kind of like a still image of a character model. What sucks even more is that it's very easy to accidentally bring yourself into this menu. Just by pressing the right trigger on your controller will take you into this menu. And if you're playing with your controller in your lap and it accidentally hits the desk, then, well, your game freezes. Now, I didn't see this specific issue for PlayStation 5 players, but the performance still wasn't great. The game runs at 30 FPS, which, while not a deal breaker for a game like this, it still definitely would have been nice to have it bumped up a bit, especially because the original plays at 60 FPS on PS5. There's also this weird film grain effect that players were reporting, and it really makes the game not look great. Other than the occasional hitches and menu freezing, I was able to enjoy the game on PC. Looks like the console version, though, may have more issues. Digital Foundry made a really good video on the performance, specifically on both console and PC. I'll link the video in the description if you guys really want to check that out. They do a much better job of explaining it. Now, we talked about the performance being one of the downsides. Another part of the game that's kind of a downside is really the ending. Not saying that the ending is bad. In fact, I actually did enjoy the ending. It's more of the amount of endings. If you go online, some people might say that there are 256 different endings to the game. But in my opinion, there's really just one real ending with minor variations. There's actually 256 different ways to get to the ending based on all the choices you make throughout the game. But at the end of the day, the game really just leads you to the overall same conclusion with a few tweaks. I think those tweaks really do matter in your first playthrough, but if you're going to play the game again from the beginning, I think it kind of diminishes the replay value. Also, while the horror elements are decent, I found that the mystery aspect of the game was much more intriguing. The game does a great job of keeping things in the shadows, making you question whether the threat is a killer or something unnatural, or if it's something else. I feel as if a lot of this was revealed slightly earlier. I think the horror aspect of the game would have packed more of a punch. Now, another thing is that this game is $60, and for a price tag that large, I don't think these performance issues should be happening. All in all, I had fun playing Until Dawn Remake. I think it's a game that you won't regret experiencing. The story is gripping, the decision making keeps you on edge, and while the performances are fantastic. That being said, while there are quote unquote different endings, it might not be the game you'll want to replay many times. Personally, I think the impact fades away after your first run. But if you're someone who hasn't played the game since 2015, maybe it is worth your time. Now, if you plan to get the game for PC, I still think it's worth playing the game. Despite all the performance issues, I think the game is just that great. But if you're on console, I would recommend you play the original instead of the remake, mainly because the original game runs on 60 FPS. The game still looks great, and performance-wise, there's a lot less issues. Still, if you love a good mystery with some horror mix in, I think it's still worth checking out. But those are just my thoughts. Now I want to hear yours. Are you someone who has never played the game like me and are debating if you should try it? Or are you someone who has played the game? And if so, is there anything in this review that you think I miss. Let me know everything down in the comments. I will be down there replying. You can also follow me directly on Twitch, where I play most of all my games live and hang out with the community. If there's something you disagree with, you can come let me know on stream. I'm always down to chat about gaming. I'll leave a link in the description. If you enjoyed the video and found it at all helpful or informative, clicking the like button or even hitting that dislike button does really help. I really do appreciate it. That being said, stay happy, stay positive, stay gaming, and I'll see you later.